The Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators meet in Sunrise, Florida in a battle where the Florida Panthers could be coming in with even more injuries, and the Nashville Predators have turned their season around. We discussed this and more on today's crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Predators.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Nashville Predators. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making each of our Locked On podcasts your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, from the host of Locked On Panthers, and thankful to be doing this crossover with one of the co-hosts of Locked On Predators, Ann Kimmel. And it's a beautiful day to be doing a show with you, my friend.
I know. I was so excited to do the show. Always love catching up with you. And this game has everybody in Nashville a little clenched up. We're a little worried about this game. So I'm excited we get to sit down and kind of talk through it ahead of time with you.
Yeah, and second of two meetings between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators. Last time they faced was on January 22nd from Bridgestone Arena, a 4-1 victory for the Florida Panthers over Nashville, where Anthony Stolarz went 26 of 27. Sam Reinhart, that was part of his streak of special teams goals there. 12 out of the 13 games in the month of January. Not only was he scoring, he scored a goal, but scored on special teams there too. But let's talk about the Predators. Mostly, I want to discuss more about just their turnaround since February 17th. That's the specific day that I want to talk about there, where they had a trip canceled, and it was kind of like a miracle drug for Nashville. Tell my listeners more about what happened since February 15th, excuse me.
Yeah, so this has been a very fascinating journey to kind of sit back and watch with the Nashville Predators. They came out of the All-Star break just playing okay, and they ended up with an absolute blowout. The Dallas Stars came in to Bridgestone Arena on home ice and blew out the Predators 9-2. And the Predators were then heading out on a road game, and the plan was that they had bought tickets to go see U2 at the Sphere in Vegas before the Vegas game. So they had bought tickets. This was going to be a team building, staff building trip. All these plans had been made, hotels booked, flights booked, tickets purchased. And after that 9-2 loss, Barry Trotz walked in the locker room and said, "Guess who's not going to Vegas, baby?" and canceled the trip. And it was so interesting because none of us in the media knew anything about this. We went into that post-game press conference, and Andrew Brunette, the head coach, we're talking about the game, and he was obviously very, very frustrated. And the comment he made was, "I guess everybody is too focused on their vacations." And we all kind of looked at each other and we were like, what is he talking about? Like, what? I don't even know what that means. We had no context about this U2 trip. Well, then word leaks out, hey, you were all so focused on going to, Vegas, to this concert. We're not going because we have a standard of excellence. And the players took it pretty well. Everybody was disappointed, but the players took it very well. And that just sort of was an accountability point for this Nashville Predators team, where it wasn't even so much about the wins and losses. It was, we're going to hold this team to a standard of excellence in play. Let the results be what the results are, but you cannot go out and put that kind of product on the ice in front of fans who have paid money to see you, and you lose 9-2. And that U2 concert that wasn't seems to have been a catalyst for the Predators saying, okay, we are focused in on hockey. We're going to do what we know we need to do. And they've been able to do it consistently.
Yeah, and you think about with Barry Trotz coming in and Andrew Brunette for first year back with the organization. I mean, those guys were two guys who have been in different organizations. They were raised by wolves throughout their time, and they have the songs of experience there too, along with guys like Ryan O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough as well. It's funny because I see the Nashville Predators as a team that kind of similar to the Flyers, except they bought at the deadline as far as like maybe overachieving this season. But I mean, they bought Anthony Beauvillier part of the mix and Jason Zucker, which the Panthers are going to be seeing Jason Zucker again after everything that happened early in the year between him and former Predator Nick Cousins back in at Mola Arena. So we'll see if anything goes out of that, but also everything that's going on with the organization too, as far as whether they're gonna the retool, rebuilding, whatever it's called. I think I see it more of a retool, but with the moves that they made, getting rid of Ryan Johansson, but also the rumors of UC Saros possibly being traded, but still he's the reason why, a big reason why have the record that they have, and with Yaroslav Askarov being possibly knocking on the door, which he was part of that big winning streak for Milwaukee this season. So I mean, how's that processing in the city of Nashville?
The trade deadline really brought a lot of questions, because it really seemed like the Nashville Predators, they were going to be sellers, especially after that 9-2 loss to Dallas. All of a sudden, the team goes on a run, and Barry Trotz says, you know what, if you're going to give me this, I'm going to add a couple pieces and see what happens. And like you said, they added Beauvillier, they added Jason Zucker. And those two pieces have really, they've done well. Every game they're getting better. Every game they're getting more and more used to it. It helps that Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette have history with both of those new players, which I think makes that transition so much easier. But you are seeing players like UC Saros stay with the franchise. And that was, the big talk. He was kind of that big goaltender mentioned in trades. And when the Predators have somebody like Yaroslav Askarov down in Milwaukee, who is playing really, really well this season. The Milwaukee Admirals went on, I think, an 18-19 game win streak, and Askarov was such a big part of that. You wondered, okay, are they going to transition to this new goaltending chapter? And they opted not to. The other surprise in goaltending was that Kevin Lankinen, our backup goaltender, stayed. And I really was surprised the team didn't pick him up like a playoff team, because this is a backup goaltender who doesn't get a lot of starts because Saros loves consistency. Mm-hmm. But Lankinen is so good in net. Barry Trotz opted to say, I'm going to stay with these two goaltenders that we have right now. We're going to let Yaroslav Askarov cook a little bit more in Milwaukee, and then let's see what happens after this season, whether Kevin Lankinen signs somewhere else. I think he's looking for a starting job and could definitely vie for one. And then they're going to bring Askarov up. But goaltending was a big question. How was this team going to finish the season in net? It looks like we're just going to be riding Saros, and Saros has been playing really, really well.
Yeah, and definitely it would stinks to see him go. I think that one team that's possibly going to be knocking on the door for UC Saros, one of my guesses is going to be the New Jersey Devils. As one of those teams who are going to be looking for a goaltender. I mean, because I don't believe that the Boston Bruins are going to be trading Linus Ullmark within the conference. I think if they are going to try to send him out, they're going to try to send him west. So I'm thinking about out of conference type of trade. So I'm thinking, if I had to predict the future, it'll probably be New Jersey as far as that. But we're gonna transition over to our second segment where we are going to turn it to Ann, who might have any Florida Panthers related questions as far as the season that has been for the Florida Panthers. We are going to discuss that and more here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Predators. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, hockey, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats. for big time savings. And the game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have you turned the volume with all that shouting? Make that switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Segment number 2 here on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Predators. Now I turn it to Ann Kimmel for anything that she wants to discuss in relation to the Florida Panthers.
I have a ton of questions for you. We're going to try to consolidate them down. I want to start with one of the most timely discussions coming up with the Florida Panthers, and that is about the Dmitry Kulikov suspension. There was a hit to the head of Connor Cherry in a game. He's been suspended 2 games. I kind of want to get your take on what happened there, and how are you feeling about the suspension? How is the fan base feeling about the suspension? What is your take on this situation?
It's very hit or miss from what I've seen, because there's the argument of Connor Cherry's falling as he's trying to get the puck. The puck is near Cherry too when Dmitry Kulikov delivered that unfortunate blow to the head. I first saw it as his elbow making contact with the shoulder of Cherry first, and then his shoulder hitting the head too, and no extension there. But the fact that Kulikov has been suspended before, back in 2015. I mean, it's been 9 years. I think that kind of went into effect of why he was suspended and all. But it's fair for what it is, because when it's funny, because Bill Daly talked about CTE and the research, and unfortunately said today that the science does not back it up as far as that, which is, I'm just shaking my head just listening to it. So I can't be someone who just goes out there and wants to and be an advocate for mental health and CTE and life after hockey, and then be angry whenever Cherry gets hit a blow to the head too. So it's a fast game. I get it, and could Kulikov move to his right a little bit too? But I mean, it's also like very fast about how he goes down versus how when delivering the hit too. So I mean, when you factor that in, they don't care about intent, they don't care about all that. So I believe when it comes to all those things mixed up, I think 2 games is very fair. I mean, if it was like 4 or 5, I would have been not too happy about that. But I think 2 fits it. That was my prediction before the suspension was even announced.
Yeah. It's such a tricky, those kind of plays are so tricky, because like you say, this game doesn't happen in slow motion. You can't watch this game frame by frame as it's happening, and the players can't make adjustments frame by frame as it's happening. So with Kulikov out of the lineup for the game against the Predators, how much of an impact do you think that's going to have on the game?
I think it's going to be huge, because the Panthers are coming off of 4 days since their last game. So they have a big break in between, which is crazy enough. 3 straight nationally televised games for them, which Bob Wischusen and Kevin Weeks will actually be on the call for the ESPN Plus game on Thursday. Just look that up right before we hit record here. So Paul Maurice did say that he's going to make a decision on who's going to be the next defenseman to play. I'm thinking Tobias Bjornfoot, who the Florida Panthers claimed off of waivers from the Vegas Golden Knights, or maybe it could be Uvis Belinskis, who played the first 18 games of the season with the Panthers right before Ekblad and Montour came back. They're also without Aaron Ekblad right after this weekend's games for the Panthers. They have a back-to-back in New York and Philly. So it's gonna be really, really tough for the Panthers to get through. Gus Forsling, on that top pair, which Gus Forsling did not play in their most recent matchup in Nashville due to the birth of his child. Him and Barkov didn't play in that one. So, and crazy enough, Barkov was not in practice. Excuse me, he was not in practice, but he's looked to Paul Maurice did say that he should be 100%. Matthew Tkachuk did get injured in a drill and did not practice on Wednesday. So they're going to see if he can skate. Hopefully for Matthew Tkachuk, we can see him walk on the ice because he's been on a tear since New Year's Day and all. So that and he's fifth in the league in points since that stretch. So it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust, especially with the blue line. I mean, with it being a likely Bjornfoot, Mahura third pair for the Panthers, I mean, there's probably going to be more emphasis on the amount of minutes that someone like Gustav Forsling and Brandon Montour play. It's going to be somewhere around 23, 24 minutes for the Panthers there too. So it's going to be and got to be on your A game because I mean, this is not the same Predators team from January 22nd.
Yeah. So one of the moves that was kind of made a big splash in the NHL at the trade deadline or right before the trade deadline was the Panthers acquired Vladimir Tarasenko. What was the role that they were looking to fill with him, and how is that transition going with the Florida Panthers?
Depth scoring. That's the name of the game for the Panthers. I mean, they're one of the top defensive teams in the NHL. They protect the slot well. They're so quick on their first pass out of the zone, and they have two guys, especially from their blue line, who could break it out without relying on a stretch, and Montour and Forsling with how great they are at skating too. So I mean that's also the thing about the Panthers as far as their defense. I mean their 5-on-5 scoring does struggle at times. They're towards the bottom third of the league in that category. So they're very reliant on the power play. I mean, just mentioned earlier about Sam Reinhart, about his 12 out of 13 games in the month of January were special teams goals too. So I mean, it's but still, Matthew Tkachuk finds a way to find him in that bumper position, even when you have three guys around. So it's for the Panthers and this stretch with depth scoring. It's going to be interesting to see how Tarasenko continues to fit in. I mean, he had multiple goals, and even one taken off in just his second game against the Calgary Flames. Unfortunately, the same game that Aaron Ekblad got hurt in that one. So, but he is likely going to be back in the placed in the bottom six now on that third line with Luosterainen and Anton Lundell. He was spotted with the blue bottom six jersey the other day, and that's the thing. There's the name for Paul Maurice wants to put into the lineup with. You could either put Evan Rodriguez back on that top line, who's the first 16 games were so important for the Panthers when you were thinking not just of defensive depth, but what you were putting together as far as the forward depth to get to know Rodriguez and Barkov together on that, and even Sam Reinhart and even Reinhart can play with someone like Anton Lundell and get him going from time to time too. And that's the great thing about mixing up the lines. And and here's the thing: they also traded for Kyle Okposo from the Buffalo Sabres too. That's another one who's trying to win a cup, and he has and when you look at his goal production there for Buffalo, it's more than some of the other guys on the team like Nick Cousins, Ryan Lomberg, and all. And so that creates more of that depth that the Panthers were looking for as they're trying to just become more balanced when the postseason does hit.
Yeah. So talking about goaltending, we talked about UC Saros. Is he going to get traded? He wasn't traded. Let's talk about your goaltender, Sergei Bobrovsky. This man is committing grand larceny. He is absolutely ridiculous with some of the saves that he has made in games lately. What is working so well for him? Is this maybe the best hockey you've seen from him this season so far right now?
In the regular season, most definitely. Because he's battled with injuries last season towards the end, where this is around the time last year where Alex Lyon was between the pipes for the Panthers right before their this is around the time of their 4-game losing streak, and then they go on a 6-game heater prior to the end of the season to officially clinch their playoff spot right before the infamous Pittsburgh-Chicago game on the Panthers off day that helped them clinch their spot in the final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference standings. So just positionally sound, and he made a great save on former Predator Matt Duchene just last week that helped the Panthers get to their comeback. But lately, the Panthers have been falling behind really early in games, too. I mean, they allowed Steven Stamkos to score 20 seconds into their Saturday game and made it close towards the end. I mean, they outshot Tampa Bay 38-5 in the final 40 minutes and still found themselves on the losing end. I mean, in the second period, unfortunately, the Panthers, they allowed 2 goals on 2 shots in the second period, which made it out of reach. But the Panthers, I mean, Palmers discusses more about how he likes how the team performs in the final part of the game that helps them carry over. Unfortunately for the Panthers, it comes with 4 days off coming. It came with 4 days off with them going into this one. So I don't know what to expect with the Panthers as how they're going to come out, because this is a big game for the Panthers as they're ready to hit the city of blinding lights after this one.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a spicy game. You touched on that earlier. I think there's going to be some spice, but I also think this is going to be 60 minutes to battle it out, because Florida Panthers, I mean, you guys have come back from down 3-0 to win games. Nashville is really pushing hard in the third period too. So I think we're looking at 60 minutes of hopefully some really, really good hockey in this game.
Yeah, and the Panthers, they're the best in the league when it comes to after the second period. I mean, they still haven't lost a game in regulation this season when they lead after 40. So I mean, the Panthers are just designed as a team that to get out early, and when they do, they rarely surrender those leads. But that's actually a good opportunity for us to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about the perspective of the playoff picture, because Nashville is in a not bad position, but in a position where you wonder how to process it. And we're going to discuss that more on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Nashville Predators.
This episode is brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers.
Back on this crossover edition of this Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Nashville Predators. Thank you once again for making both of our podcasts your first listen of the day. And by the way, Ann, I will never forgive you two for forcing one of their albums on my Apple Music back a few years ago. I want them to do it on my terms, not on their terms, by the way. So
yeah, you know what? We hear that all the time when people talk about the Nashville Predators on YouTube. They're like, "Do you know what they did?" And I'm like, "They did it to everyone. We know."
Yep. So, and by the way, if the Stanley Cup ever comes to Nashville, I hope that there's some type of performance by them too. Yes. But let's stay on track as far as the hockey. So, playoff picture for the Nashville Predators and the Florida Panthers. I mean, we're recording this right before Wednesday's slate of games. So the only game in relation to the Florida Panthers as far as seeding and first round opponents is the Capitals Maple Leafs game, which is actually on TNT tonight. So and it's funny because the nightcap of the TNT slate is actually the Minnesota Wild LA Kings, which the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights play twice going down the stretch for that final wild card spot. But
Yes.
we were talking about in our pre-production meeting how where with Nashville going 13-0-2 in their last 15, they're not far enough to get into the top three, 7 points ahead, but they're also far enough that they're not the first team out, which is 8 points ahead of the Minnesota Wild for that final wild card spot. Which the Florida Panthers, it's crazy because Thursday, big slate of games as far as the out of town scoreboard because the Rangers and the Bruins played one another right before the Panthers faced New York at the Garden on a nationally televised game. But how is Nashville processing where they are as far as possibly being locked into wild card one, which if the season were to end today, their first round opponent would be the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, you know what? First of all, I have to say that Nashville Predators are processing this postseason look like, what the what? Because really nobody, really big picture, if we're just being very honest, nobody expected the Nashville Predators to be in a playoff spot. Maybe if it was really good, if they got so lucky, they could sneak in. But where they're at now and the way that they're playing right now, suddenly you look at the postseason very differently when you're the Nashville Predators. And if the season were to end today and you're looking at like, who are the Predators going to face? Winnipeg, this is a team that's always been a little bit of a bugaboo for the Predators, but it may be the team they would most want to play against, because especially right now you do have the Connor Hellebuyck factor, and Connor Hellebuyck in the postseason is just a different beast than he even is in the regular season. So that is a little bit worrisome because you've got to get those goals past him. But Nashville right now is on a scoring tear. And Winnipeg tends to win games, lower scoring games, closer games. So if Nashville could continue to play the way that they're playing now, I think they would feel like, okay, let's give this a shot. It's tricky. There's going to be no easy first round for the Nashville Predators. There's just not going to be an easy first round. But if you're looking at the teams that they could face, I would maybe pick Dallas ahead of them, which is strange because the Dallas Stars, if you remember, beat the Predators 9-2 and kicked off this whole hot mess. But Winnipeg with Connor Hellebuyck, that is a whole thing. Colorado can be good. Colorado is like that nursery rhyme. When they're good, they're very good. And when they're bad, they're naughty, but usually they're very, very good. So I think it would be interesting to go up against Winnipeg and see how they can do against the Jets. But again, no easy path for the Nashville Predators when it comes to this postseason at all.
Yeah. And I feel that, with Andrew Burnett, it's very familiar as far as him having a team that scores a lot of goals, where he coached the Florida Panthers in that 2022 season to a President's Trophy. I mean, they were scoring over 4 goals a game and all. And then in that same postseason, the offense was contained by Washington for a good portion of the series, and even Tampa Bay. And I mean, if you're seeing the Connor Hellebuyck factor in round number 1, I mean, there won't be a lot of goals, or as UC Soros says in that one commercial, no goals as far as that. But I mean, because these two teams, I mean, as far as Florida and Nashville, I mean, two different positions. I mean, because every night for the top of the President's Trophy or / top of the Eastern Conference is like flip-flopping every single night, because I mean, mentioned New York and Boston going up against each other, and then in a matter of a week and a half, the Panthers will be facing Boston Bruins at home next Tuesday, and then another nationally televised game on April 6th. So it's gonna. I feel like even though the Panthers, things can change up and down. They could fall. They could go into that 2-3 and face the Maple Leafs in round 1, or face even the Capitals, too, or even the Islanders or Red Wings. It just changes so much. I still think that the thought process is the same. Get your game right for the postseason and prepare and all. And what I like about Paul Maurice is the fact that he's so process over results when it comes to this regular season. And if you build the good habits, you're gonna find ways to win. And And like I've said, Andrew Burnett, he was always going to get another opportunity, and there was a lot of lessons learned along the way. Even though in the 2022 postseason, it took a little bit, it took a little long for him to make those adjustments. And hey, now looking at New Jersey firing Lindy Ruff, I'm sure they're wondering if they could use an Andrew Burnett, because even his presence there maybe turned it up a notch in New Jersey last season, and helped quite a bit, as he was the guy running the power play under Joel Quenneville's staff when right before he got the interim tag.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew Burnett has been really great for this team, and God love him. He has had to be so patient because he has preached this consistent message to a team with a lot of young players, a lot of new veterans coming in the locker room, a very different look. And he has been so patient to continually preach the same things. And I think what you're seeing now through this run is the team is like, oh, wait, he's right. Let's do it his way. So it's been really interesting to see him kind of try to herd this team into the situation that they're in right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens down the stretch. Tonight's game against the Panthers is going to be huge. And what is interesting, and I do want to share this with you, Andrew Burnett, these games against teams like the Florida Panthers, where he has been, where he loves the players, where he loves the front office people, where he has, invested in, they're really tough for him. Like, he's very open about, like, this is hard for me because there are people that I love on the other bench that I really have always wanted to see succeed. And now I have to try to beat them. So it's going to be a really interesting night on the ice, on the scoreboard, and probably in Andrew Burnett's heart too.
But it's also great that we get the human side of things, because don't we want more personality in this game? So, I mean, I love that. I love the vulnerability there for Bruno. And it's he brought a lot of memories regardless of the lack of success in past the regular season. And I want to thank you so much for doing this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Predators. Tell my listeners where they can find you online, because we hadn't even mentioned on the show, we both write for the Hockey News too. So tell everybody where they can find you.
So you can find me online on social media at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find the Predators podcast online anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can also find us on social media at @LO_Predators.
And for the people on the Predators feed, you can find me online at MondoMan12 on X. You can find the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers, and you can catch my writing and David's works writing at thehockeynews.com/Florida. And also, proud of myself for all the YouTube references that I made with a straight face. So thank you, Ann, for dealing with it, and for the listeners. So, and thank you for doing this, and hope to see you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Ann Kimmel, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.